Methodologies. These slides are open for commenting. You can go to the QR code over here with your phone, or you can just type into your browser bit.ly/Maroc25 Bali, and it will be our capital audience. So usually when I start a workshop like this, I ask the audience using this meter or something like this, what's your main interest in this session today? Are you here because you want to learn about research tools for your own use? Do you want to use them so your students can benefit from them if you're teaching? Or do you want to share your own experience using research tools with others? Or do you have another reason for being here? And the plan is, I want to start with some warnings, stories of inappropriate AI use in research that I've experienced. I want to know more about your current AI use in research, and I want to share my experience with AI use in research. And then we won't be able to do hands-on experiments live, but I'm going to suggest hands-on experiments that you can then do on your own later. And then I'll do a very quick reflection and discussion of functionality of particular tools which I've learned to do from someone called Anna Mills. So I just want to share how I'm feeling about AI. I'm an educational developer, so my main job is to support other educators at the American University in Cairo with their teaching, and every time there's a new technology, I'm often one of the people who has to learn the new technology in order to help people figure out how to integrate it in their teaching or how their students might be using it and things like that. I also teach a course for undergraduate students on digital literacy and intercultural learning, and of course AI literacy is part of that. And how I feel about AI right now is just that there are so many things happening all the time, and new tools and capabilities of tools are changing all the time, so it's a little bit exhausting. So kind of like that woman in that picture, I feel a little bit burdened by this. Every time I do a workshop related to using AI in research, 1 or 2 days before or after the workshop, I discover a new tool and I have to figure out whether it's integrated in this presentation or not. And the other thing that I have to be clear about is that I, as a person, cannot be an expert on AI tools that are specific to your particular disciplines. Every discipline might have a very, very specific tool that's trained on supporting like the DNA sequencing or with financial analysis or things like that. I won't know these. Only you can know these. There's no reason for me to ever explore them. I wouldn't even know how to use them. I wouldn't know if the outputs are good because these are not my fields. So you would have to have those discussions separately from your own discipline. And the caveat, like I said, is every time I develop this workshop, something new happens. So I want to start with one of the warning stories, and it's Laura and Charlotte's story. Laura and Charlotte are colleagues from South Africa, and one day Laura received a Google Scholar alert telling her that one of her papers had been cited by someone. And then she goes and checks the paper that was citing her paper, and the paper is citing a paper that she and Laura would have written, but she doesn't remember ever writing that paper. So she looks at the citation of the paper. She does not remember ever publishing the paper with that title, co-authored with Charlotte. And then she goes into the paper itself that's citing the paper, and she finds a paragraph describing some research that she and Laura did that they had never done. Clearly, what happened here is that someone used AI to help write their literature review, and the AI tool made up a reference, made up a paper, made up a description of the paper, of a paper that doesn't exist. And the person who wrote that paper didn't even go to check if that paper exists, didn't even go and see if they could read the paper. They just took the AI-generated literature review. It sounded plausible that Laura and Charlotte would write a paper about that topic, and they just used it. This has also happened to me, by the way. I've been quoted for things that I never said. I saw people presenting and say, and Maha said this, and like, where did I say that? I've never ever said that. There are expressions that I would never use. This kind of thing is happening now, and the problem is that these papers are now published in journals that are peer-reviewed, because of course the reviewer doesn't have time to check every single source in the paper, right? The second, speaking of peer review, is a story that happened directly to me. I submitted a paper on a topic related to AI, by the way, to a journal, and it was co-authored with a few other people, and one of my co-authors was actually an undergraduate student, read the reviewer too, which was a bit of a weird review because it was saying some odd stuff like it's missing the discussion section, it's missing the reference section. That was not true because we had it. And then the student said, Doctor, I think this paper, this peer review was generated with AI. And then I looked at it again and I showed it to the editor and we were both like, oh my God, it's been generated by AI. And the editor just told us to ignore this review. I hope they never invited that reviewer again. Because when you're invited to review a paper, you're meant to give your opinion on the paper. You're not supposed to give an AI-generated review because the editors could have done that. So what's the point of you doing it? If you don't have time, just don't do it. Just say, I don't have time to do this review. This last story also happened to me. I was analyzing some survey, and it was actually a survey about from a community of people who work on ethics of AI. And in the survey, I noticed I was analyzing qualitative data, and there were like 5 out of 100 or so responses that were a bit longer than everybody else's, and like in bullet points and numbered lists and things like that. So I thought I'd leave them until later because they were very long. Like everybody else's responses, it was about what should our community do next, and most people's responses were 2-3 lines. These ones were like 15 lines or so. When I went back to look at them, I looked at them and I noticed they are 99% AI generated. They're very, very organized in the way that AI output usually is. Some of them even have the text in the end, like in conclusion or ultimately, that a lot of AI ends up talking about. And it covered everything possible in this answer, which nobody's answer should be that comprehensive. It's a survey. I want to know your opinion. I don't want to know what's the right thing to do. I want to know what you think is the priority. And those answers weren't giving me a priority. They were making a list of all the possible things the community could do. So, I mean, they covered everything, but it couldn't possibly be that person's answer. Some of my co-researchers said, well, maybe they're not native speakers of English, and they just wanted to use it to translate their words, and I'm thinking, yeah, but if they were translating their words, it would still be like 1 or 2 sentences. It wouldn't be like 10 bullet points. And this is another thing. If you don't have an answer to the survey, just go answer the survey. There's really no point in giving an AI-generated answer because that's not your answer as a person, right? So this really bothered me. So I want to know a little bit more about your experiences with AI and research. I'm going to ask these questions, and if you're watching this as a recording, I want you to reflect on these on your own. So which of these tools have you used in the past for research? So there are general AI tools, like ChatGPT, the free version, or the paid version, or something like Copilot, or Gemini, or Claude, or Pro.com, which gives you access to several different AI tools, or Perplexity, and then the newer ones that I discovered like a month ago are Perplexity Deep Research and Gemini Deep Research, which are not just generic AI tools, but they actually do scholarly research and they produce longer papers. And then there are AI tools that are just made to help out with research. Examples are Research Rabbit, Connected Papers, Kenius, SciSpace, which used to be called Typeset, Consensus, Elicit, Cite, ChatPDF, Semantic Scholar. There's one called Storm from Stanford, and there are paid versions of all of these, right? And then my next question is, have you tried using AI for any of these functions? Brainstorming research questions, finding articles or sources, summarizing or paraphrasing content of articles, synthesizing research from multiple sources, or writing parts of an article, writing an abstract for your article, or analyzing data, or for anything else. And if you use AI, I want to know how reliable it is. Have you found it usually reliable, not so reliable? Does it depend on the topic, on each of the functions that we just discussed right now? Because it may differ by discipline, it may differ by your own expertise in what you're doing. Emily Bender and Chirag Shah have argued that essential aspects of research may be lost with efficiencies that we get from using AI. So we're saving time, but what are we losing? Right? So in their article Situating Research, they argue removing or reducing interactions in an effort to retrieve presumably more relevant information can be detrimental to many fundamental aspects of research, including information verification, information literacy, and serendipity. And the emphasis here is mine. This serendipity aspect and the verification aspect are so important. I think information literacy will evolve given the existence of AI right now and how prevalent it is and how ubiquitous it is. So as you explore any of the tools that I talk about coming next, please reflect on what important elements of the research process might be used by using AI here. And it's very important to think about the difference between expert and non-expert use. If you're an expert on the topic, you'll be able to evaluate the output of the AI much faster than if you're not an expert. If you're not an expert, you might be getting hallucinations or biased AI output, and you won't necessarily realize that you have to do a lot of work to verify and validate the output. So my personal use of AI is I find ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude all useful for brainstorming and also deep research being useful for brainstorming. But for finding articles, I find ChatGPT unreliable. I find Gemini and Copilot semi-reliable. They give you real sources. ChatGPT makes up sources that don't exist unless you make sure it's connected to the internet. But Copilot and Gemini, they will give you real sources. but what they're telling you is in the sources isn't necessarily in those sources. Whereas things like Genius and deep research, they're more reliable in the sources. Usually what it says is in the sources for the most part. Not always, but more reliable definitely, and Copilot in general. Summarizing and paraphrasing, yeah, I've used most of the tools and they're fine for that most of the time. As long as I know the content, I can evaluate whether it's summarized properly. For writing the abstract, I use ChatGPT paid version by Poe, and it helps. I still have to edit it later, but I've used it. And for data analysis, if I have conducted the data myself, it's qualitative data, I did the interviews or focus groups myself, and I anonymized it and I've used, got permission to put it through there. I found Claude, I've used it, I didn't like it that much, even though it's supposed to be quite good at this. I've used Poe, the paid version, it's kind of okay. It's alright. And for translation, I've used ChatGPT. The translation from English to Arabic is quite good. Still misses a lot of things, but it's better than starting from scratch, and it's better than Google Translate. And Typesetter SciSpace, I've used it to see if it can describe an English article to me in Arabic, and it does quite a good job. But I do want to tell you about this article that's very important. This article, Ironies of Generative AI, is about understanding and mitigating productivity loss and human-AI interaction. Because we may think that as soon as we start using AI, productivity is going to increase, but actually there's a lot of productivity loss if you don't know what things AI is good at. So there are certain things AI is good enough at, and there are certain things that are too complex for AI to do well. And there's a space in between where AI looks like it might be doing okay, but you need to revise the output a lot, and the less expert you are, the more extra work you're going to have to do to revise the work of AI, so you end up wasting time instead of becoming more productive. This is a really interesting article, and the key reasons they say productivity loss happens with generative AI systems is there's a shift in the user role from production to evaluation. So from producing content to evaluating content. It restructures the workflows in unhelpful ways, there are interruptions, and there's a tendency for automation to make easy tasks easier, but it makes harder tasks harder. And you need to figure out which tasks are in the easy front where the AI is going to make it easy for you, and which tasks are too hard for it, and which tasks are in between that are a waste of your time. And it will take you a while to figure that out. Again, I want to remind you, one of the issues is the hallucination, where the AI makes things up that are not true. So Gemini is from Google. Gemini has always been connected to the internet. It's not like the early ChatGPT that was not connected to the internet, and it still hallucinates. So this is when I asked Gemini about myself, and it says a lot of things about me that are true, but it also says I'm on the advisory board of the Open Education Consortium, which is not true. It says that I won a UNESCO prize for Open Distance Learning in 2017, which I never won. I've never got any UNESCO prizes before. I have no idea where it comes up with this, but I know myself, and I know this is not me. So these things still happen. And if you don't know me well enough, but you know me a little bit, you say, oh, that sounds like something she could get, you know? The new thing from Gemini and Perplexity, which is the deep research modes, these can produce like an 8,000 or 10,000 words full research report with references. What I like about Gemini, as opposed to any other of the research tools that I'm going to show you now, is it shows you the plan for how it's going to respond to your query so that you can edit and modify it before it starts actually generating. So this is an example of this. I asked it to talk about AI overuse and research and the dangers of that. And so it gives me here the research websites, what it's planning to do. I'm not showing you everything, but it also actually gives a lot more detail. And then it's planning to analyze the results and create a report. And you have the option to edit the plan. So if it misunderstood something here, you can change it, and then you click Start Research. So this is something I like, that it's showing you the process. It's some degree of transparency, which most AI doesn't have. I don't know if it's genuine transparency or if it's pretend transparency, maybe a fake transparency. But it has, in the past, helped me catch the AI if it's going to go to the wrong sources. For example, I can say, no, this is the source I want you to use. These are the authors I want you to use. So like one time I gave it the last names of the authors that I wanted it to search for, and we put the wrong first names on, and that could have caused a lot of problems. And it also added other authors that I didn't want. So I corrected that, and then it went on the right track. The important thing always when using any AI for research is, even when the resulting paper has references, you still need to check the references. Not just to check that they exist, they will probably exist at this point. But you want to check that what is cited is accurately reflected in the original paper. It's not always the case. It may not also choose the best quality papers. So we'll go through this as we go on now. The other things to keep in mind, the AI-based research tools that search literature, which are many of the ones I'm going to show you now, do they have access to the full articles that are behind paywalls, the ones that are not open access? I don't think they do. Are they just using the abstract? And in that case, are we really getting the depth of what is in these articles or not? So, for example, AUC has access to the pro version of Perplexity. Actually, one of our students contacted them and said, I can be your ambassador, and they said anybody with an AUC email address can have the pro version of Perplexity. So we all have access to that, and that's what I'm going to show you first, and you can try it and see. So one of the things I like about Perplexity is it has several different modes, and you can check, you can tell it, I want you to search the web, or I only want you to search academic sources, or I only want you to search social sources like Reddit and things like that. So you can remove the social and web and only focus on academic sources in order to get higher quality outcomes. You can also choose which model to use. Do you want to use the reasoning from DeepSeek, the reasoning from OpenAI, O3 Mini, and so on. And it also has an auto which chooses the best search for what you're looking for. And then one of the things that happens is as you go through it, it gives you the sources that here at the top, and also for every piece of information, you'll find a number, one to however many, that tells you where this information comes from. So you can go to the original source and check that this information is in that source. The other things that I like about it is that there's an option to create a space, and I use this with my students, where I upload certain files, and I give the AI instructions for how to interact with these sources, and then I collaborate with others. I give access to my students to access the same files and to interact with them the same way I want to. So instead of asking my students necessarily to read 5 different articles, I put the 5 articles, sometimes videos, sometimes other things, and then I give the AI certain instructions for how to respond to their prompts when they ask. And then I give my students an assignment or an activity to do with this content. The other thing I like about Perplexity is that they have this AI data retention option that you can turn it off so that it doesn't train from your data, or if you're using very private data, you can turn it off so that it doesn't record that data and keep learning from it, so it gives you a little bit more privacy. The other one that I recently discovered, not so recently now, but it's for a few months now, doctoral. You can upload several sources, ask questions, and you can create a podcast conversation about, and this is of course AI-generated podcast conversation based on the data you give it. This is also like Perplexity Spaces, you're giving it information and it's working with it, and so it hallucinates less because you're giving it content to focus on. But if you give it too much information, it starts to hallucinate. So you need to be very careful with how much information you give it so that it stays accurate. The one I'm going to show you now was called Typeset, and now it's called SciSpace.com. And I use it to ask questions of particular reading that I don't have time to read or is difficult for me to read. But you have to eventually try to read it yourself, but it's just a way to get started. So it has lots of functionalities actually, but the one I like to use a lot is Chat with PDF. I upload an article, and then I ask questions. And it also has the option for you to ask in different languages. It also gives you suggestions of questions you can ask. You see over here, like the plus 13 more, these are options for the kinds of questions you could ask if you didn't have one in particular in mind. And you can also select a particular part and ask it to explain that text or to summarize that text. And you can also choose to communicate it with it as an academic or a professional or as your general public. My husband, I was showing him this tool and he's a medical doctor, and he was like, it's talking to me like a layperson but a doctor. I wanted to talk to me on my level, so we changed that. And so there was an option to do that, to tell it to talk to me. It also has all these other functions, right? It has an AI writer, a paraphrase, or citation generator. It can extract data. It also has an AI detector, which I was using. It can help with the literature review by searching for papers, and it also has this research PDF to video option. So you can actually have it create slides for you out of an article. So I wrote an article myself, I gave it the slides to create slides out of it. It can also generate a video with voiceover and everything. I would not use it as it is, but it's a good start, I think. It's a very boring set of slides, you know, if you couldn't work with it. You can also ask it to generate a summary about a topic and compare the papers by columns, like the methods, the conclusions. So this is helpful, I think, when you're doing a literature review to see all the different papers and have for something that matters to you, that you're interested in comparing about. But I would, if you ever do this on your own, I would compare the list of sources it comes up with the ones you would find on Google Scholar. Are they same sources? Are they similar quality sources? What kind of biases might they be in the Google Scholar output or in the Science-based output? So to experiment, I would say upload a paper that you know very well, one you've written or one you've read very deeply before, and ask it questions and see if it misses something important in the summary. I have noticed that it sometimes misses out, for example, on social justice nuances in articles for some reason. Other people have told me they found the same thing. I'm not really sure why. So if you test Perplexity or Science-based or any tool, ask yourself, how good is the AI generated answer? How good is the selection of sources? Are they trustworthy? And now try the same question in Google or Google Scholar. How do the results compare? Does it give an AI overview? Because Google does that now, but Google Scholar doesn't, or does it give just search results? Another tool is called Elicit. It has a notebook and has a library. Usually when you first start using Elicit, it'll give you the summary of the top 4 papers it finds, and it gives it to you like this useful paragraph that helps summarize the topic if you're just starting on it, which is good. It also can give you more details about each paper and its summary, and again, you can have lots of these different columns to compare the methodology or compare the limitations or compare the outcomes. But you have a limitation with the free version of how many columns you can have. But the point is, I want you to look at the sources on the left over here, and I want to show you this particular thing. This code source has 223 citations. The next source, Sharma, has 0 citations. I have no idea why. That is the second source it's looking at. We don't understand what the algorithm is working with, so I think we need to be quite careful and scrutinize the outputs it uses. So later, when you experiment, try it with an area you're very knowledgeable about, where you know what the top papers are, and see if the top 4 papers it produces are the same ones you would have used. Are they the same as the top 4 Google Scholar would choose? Are they widely cited papers? How widely cited are the papers it comes up with? Because someone was telling me sometimes it will get you sources that are uploaded in repositories and not necessarily the best quality papers. Elicit also has a library where you can upload what you want, either upload the papers directly or connect it to Zotero, which is a reference management system. And then that way you know the sources you're getting it, and then it just helps with the analysis. So the paid version can be really useful for this because it can give you unlimited summaries of the papers and things like that. But I have not tried the paid version. But you can upload several papers, and even with the free version, and ask it to do this extraction and compare them and so on. And this extracting data from multiple sources and comparing the summary and the main findings or something else could be useful. Another one is consensus. Now, consensus takes a particular approach to literature, and it's trying to tell you whether papers show agreement or disagreement on the topic that you're asking about. So this is really interesting because what it does is it'll give you an answer about the neutral or the positive or negative responses, but also cites particular papers that have this perspective. So you can take a look, see this one says mixed evidence or positive correlation, and there are like 5 sources that do that, that say this sentence that it's talking about. So you can keep going through this and find out more. So an activity for you to try later is try any 3 of these tools with an area you're very knowledgeable about and does it produce the nuanced perspective you would have written yourself, and compare that to Google Scholar. And the thing about comparing 3 different tools is that I think some of these tools work better for some disciplines than others. Genius is a different one. It does things a little bit differently because what it does, it takes your current document as an input, and then based on that, it searches for you, not just using keywords or whatever that you would do in a traditional search engine. And so you can upload your own paper or do a search. You can search a general topic and find articles, and it shows you the citations over here from the very beginning, and you can decide to look at them and think about how it compares to Google Scholar or library search. But you can also ask it to dig deeper into something. So select something and ask it to dig deeper into this thing. But I have used it where I upload a PDF and ask it to recommend other similar articles, and it's okay. It does an okay job. Connected Papers does a visualization it does this visual where you know which papers cite each other and talk about each other's work. And then the size of these nodes over here relate to the number of citation, and the color relates to the publication year. So you can get the more recent papers, you can get the ones that are clustered where a lot of people are citing them and things like that. It's a visualization for those of you who like visuals. And then you can click on any of the nodes and find out more on it. Like this one, for example. Marking types, I click it, it gives you more information, the abstract and so on. It tells me where I find it, and so on. This other one, Research Rabbit, is one that I have not been using because I never get good results with it. It always tends towards the medical field, and I've heard that people who work in biology and medicine like using it because it's probably very well trained on PubMed or something. There's also one called AnswerThis.io, which is supposed to give you research proposals in seconds. Helps you do literature review and deep research, which is in their paid version. And you can also upload links to it. You can do filters, which is interesting because I haven't seen that in any of the others, but you can control which academic databases are used and the timing of the papers. This I don't tend to see in any of the other tools. I haven't used this one a lot. And it also has a prompt helper to help you write a better prompt. This is also, I think, maybe useful for students if you're not very experienced in doing research. And then there's an interesting podcast and a paper that you could explore later on your own about how to optimize the systematic review process using AI tools. Now, here's my overall sense of what I want to recommend to you after today. Before depending on any particular AI research tool, experiment first. Try different ones. Be skeptical and vigilant. Try to find the holes. Try to find what's wrong with it. Try to find out what it's missing. Compare it to what you're doing manually or what you're doing with Google Scholar or doing in your library. Is it missing something important? Find appropriate tools for your purposes. Figure out which of these tools fits to what purpose you want to have. If you're doing research literature review, what would you use? If you're trying to do analysis, which one does better analysis for your field, you know? And always, if you're going to publish what you produce, check your journal guidelines. If you're going to do it at your university, check your university guidelines. I'm going to show you some journal guidelines now, which I find really useful. So Nature magazine was, not Nature magazine, actually Nature journal was one of the first journals to come up with guidelines asserting that generative AI tools such as ChatGPT do not qualify for authorship. They cannot be held accountable for the results. They also can't replicate necessarily the results. And require use of generative AI tools to be declared in the methods section. So some people say you see it in the methods section, some say you have to do it in the citation section, some say in the acknowledgement section. If you're not sure, put it everywhere and let the editor choose where they want it. I publish a variety of journals. The one I like with well thought out guidelines is Open Praxis because it spells out the possible AI uses and what they need. So they ask authors to clarify which stage AI would it be used. Like, is it a direct contribution, like copy pasting text? Is it general assistance? Is it for a specific section? Did you provide data development, for editing and reviewing, for language translation, for localization, for data analysis, for data visualization, for doing code or any algorithms? And so it makes it easy for you to choose which of these things you've done. The other thing is if you're ever going to use AI to analyze data that is based on human subjects, then it needs to go through ethical review, right? At my university, we have IRB for research review. So the ethical boards may wish to protect privacy of human subjects when data is collected, and if you're going to do an informed consent, then you need to say the data may be put through generative AI tools for analysis, or that it at least has to be anonymized before being used due to privacy concerns. And there are different examples of universities who have been writing out these policies, so you can check these out with these links. So what now? I think we need to know what the possible tools are and what they can each do, and try them on something you know well. Know about the specialized tools in your own discipline that are probably much higher quality than Gen AI, which is more generic. And consider ethical uses. Can you be fully responsible for the output? Do you have enough expertise to evaluate the output? And then, two questions for you. What was the most useful thing you'll take away from today? The other one I normally ask is, what kind of support do you need going forward? But since I can't personally support you, I do want to recommend that you join us at the Mid-Year Festival, where we're going to have a lot of professional development throughout June, July, and August. So I'm going to put the link to that when I'm doing the live session. These slides are my own, but they're inspired by a workshop by Anna Mills, which she gave at the mid-year festival last year. Thank you very much, and here are the slides again.